So there is an escape that happened in New Orleans overnight. 11 inmates escaped from the Orleans Parish Prison, and they don't really know what time they escaped. They're presuming it was around the possibly midnight hour to 7 in the morning, supposedly. You're hearing all kind of reports about this and that. But I'm considering on going to work and doing some DoorDashing. But that's something to consider too. When you're going out and going to work DoorDashing, you may have to consider that they have 11 escaped inmates that could possibly carjack you or cause you harm, and you need to keep your head on a swivel and be aware of what's going on. So you need to pay attention, right? Because you don't want to be the one who's not paying attention, and bam, next thing you know, you get bum rushed by a baker's dozen of escaped inmates from Orleans Parish Prison who are all on violent charges, some on murder charges, right? So you have to be careful of this stuff. Anyway, they supposedly they have 10 that are still on the run, right? They captured one in the French Quarter. The state police assisted in that capture, and supposedly video imaging and video monitoring is what recognized him as one of the escapees, and they swooped in and they got him. Last I checked, there's possibly one that's on the run, and they found him on the Spillway Bridge, which leads over a swamp. And the swamp area is a bridge that you can't get right or left on. So supposedly one of the inmates jumped into the swamp. Who knows? Maybe an alligator ate him, and maybe that'll save the taxpayer some money. We don't know. This is all information that we're waiting to find out. But we do know that these inmates were all violent offenders, right? I'm a violent offender. My felony charges of violent offense. I served my time, though. I'm a law-abiding citizen now. These dudes are not trying to obey the law. They still thugging and gangbanging, right? You can go look. I'm going to put a picture up of the escaped hole that they escaped out of. See that right there? Yes, that's the escaped hole that they broke out of. That hole is in front of that hole, there used to be a stainless steel sink toilet combo that sat in front of it. I was in jails, and I've been in many prisons in the state of Louisiana, and that is what is common throughout the state and common throughout most prisons. So those dudes somehow or another moved that out the way. I don't know if the hole was there already, or once they moved the toilet out the way, moved it back and forth, some Alcatraz type stuff where they just slowly cut the hole into place, as you can see in the picture. But eventually they all got out the hole. All these dudes are small dudes. No big dude, big heavy who was in prison, he ain't getting out that hole. This was all slim dudes. They all got out the hole, and now there's 10 of them on the loose. I don't know. They could be back in the ninth ward. You see in the picture, right? There's a 9 in the middle of the head. I'm assuming that's for the ninth ward. So some of these dudes are probably from the ninth ward. Some of them probably from uptown. So, different parts of the city might be from Algiers. I don't know. But now they got the state police. I'm sure Jefferson Parish and St. Tammany Parish, everybody's on high alert. And St. Bernard Parish, Orleans Parish, they all on high alert waiting to find these inmates. I'm assuming, depending on how long these inmates stay escaped, eventually they're going to call the feds in, and they're going to hit most wanted, So they've been gone long enough to where that at this point, I'm talking to you, it's probably 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday. They escaped last night, early mornings of Friday, AM hours, or late night hours of Thursday. So they had enough time to connect with their homeboys and their rounds and get a blaster. That's right. At this point, I'm sure they got a heater. I'm sure they strapped. Listen, look, there's videos. I'll link it. There's videos in Orleans Parish where these dudes got straps inside the prison. So if they strapped inside the prison, then they really got and found a way to get themselves a hammer on the street. So they connected with their people, and I'm sure some of them are probably armed and dangerous at this point. Here's the thing. Orleans Parish, honestly, the leadership in New Orleans is a joke. The mayor, come on, y'all. If you can be keeping up with anything, the mayor in New Orleans, the people voted this fool in 2 terms. I lived in New Orleans. I didn't vote for the woman. I voted for Charbonnet the first time, and I don't remember who I voted for the second time. It was probably an independent, because I usually vote independently. But I tried to vote for Charbonnet. I rarely give, the Democrat the benefit of the doubt, but I did. I thought she was going to do a good job, because she was focusing on dealing with crime. But no, nobody wants to deal with crime. They all about it. Cut the homeboys and the murderers some slack, right? So that's what they wanted to do. So anyway, now they got a problem, and they call in this chief of police from California, right? Because California's pure trash, right? The system over there. So I'm guessing they think that she could do a better job in New Orleans. All she's going to do is bring her ideologies to New Orleans and bring more trash, right? With her ideologies. Listen, you could come from one place or another, it's all good, but it's when you start trying to implement your trash can ideologies that don't work in your judicial system to a judicial system in Orleans Parish that's already jacked up and broken, and you bring it in. Anyway, she's saying it's unacceptable because the public didn't know that these escaped inmates were escaped until 2 to 4 hours later from the time that the jail officials actually knew that they were escaped. They didn't release that information to the public. Supposedly, they didn't even release that information right away to the state police. So the state police could have got involved much sooner, at least hours, 2 to 4 hours in advance, stopping these dudes sooner, right? Now, at this point, I'm assuming that, like I said, most of these dudes are strapped up and they're ready to go. So I don't know. This may turn out to where it turns into a standoff before it's all said and done. There's 10 of them. When's the last time you ever heard of 10 inmates escaping from one place? Not even in Alcatraz did that happen. 10 inmates. New Orleans constantly gets bad looks on itself. So the leadership has to change. And if you live in New Orleans and you keep voting for the same old, you're part of the problem. You keep thinking it's going to change. It ain't the man's fault. It's the leadership's fault. Put better leadership in place, right? So most of Louisiana leadership at this point came out with public statements. Jeff Landry came out with a statement, and he said that the one inmate was caught, and he was saying to the other 10, turn yourselves in because it's not going to be long before you're also caught. Liz Morrell, who's the Attorney General of Louisiana, she came out and said that, obviously there's a breakdown in the system. We all know that there's a breakdown in the system, Liz. That's not the issue. The issue is, are we going to change the leadership, and are the constituents going to start holding their leadership accountable instead of taking up for corrupt leadership, right? It doesn't matter the party. Quit defending corrupt leadership. So now we got 10 escapees out there. Jason Williams, the DA in New Orleans, he has already came out and made a public statement that he's going to do what he can. He's already reached out to some of the victims of the perpetrators, because now you got to think, right? Some of these dudes, one thing in New Orleans that these dudes are really good at doing, the criminals in New Orleans, is causing and threatening potential witnesses and keeping the witnesses from showing up at court. That's why they have a hard time with prosecuting a lot of these dudes, because people are scared to death, because in the neighborhoods they grow up in, the police presence ain't gonna be enough there to protect them. There's not enough protection. So eventually they get unalived too, or their family members get unalived. They got to live underneath the tyranny of these gangsters in the New Orleans neighborhoods. So that's why conviction rates are so low. New Orleans, I promise you, got more killers roaming around the street than probably in most third world countries, because they can't prosecute these dudes. Some of these dudes got a dozen bodies on them, unalived. I ain't talking about the stupid thing they call bodies for nowadays, that sexual stuff. I'm talking about real bodies beneath the earth, buried, cremated. That's how many they put on the ground. But now, some of these witnesses have to worry about, because from what I understand, a couple of these dudes were already convicted, waiting to be transferred to the state prison, and they had been convicted since last year, waiting for transfer. That's how overcrowded Louisiana prisons are. Then we recently shut down some of the Louisiana prisons. Some Louisiana prisons were actually shut down. I think DeQuincy, Louisiana, which is a prison I've been to, was shut down. WCI, which they renamed to Rayburn Phelps, I think Rayburn Correctional, that place is also shut down. I don't know if they reopened any of these places. David Wade Correctional, or Fort Wade Correct, not David Wade, Fort Wade Correctional has been shut down and turned into maybe some other program, I don't know, drug program. So there's not a lot of room to put these people, because the state prison only has so much. Hunt's prison is off the hook right now. They've been all over the news for suicides, overdoses, unaliving murders, people getting shanked up in there, all kind of stuff, corruption, you name it. But the Louisiana State Prison has its issues, because they already got juveniles there, because they had to shut down the juvenile detention center in Bridge City, Louisiana, because dudes was escaping. I'm assuming from what they say, the dude they captured that's part of the escape in New Orleans, he was one of the ones who escaped from Bridge City. My brother was in Bridge City. I know a bunch of people who did time in Bridge City back as juveniles. It's a juvenile detention center. But one of the dudes escaped from there, and then he also escaped. So he's a two-time escapee. So when he gets to Angola, eventually they're gonna lock him down in Camp J. He's gonna lay down for a little while, because they ain't gonna take no chances. He'll go lay him down for probably 10 years, just to get his mind right, so he think about escaping again. But they got escape artists, right? Anyway, all of these dudes escaped, and who knows how this is going to turn out. But I just want to get this video out there today to talk about that. And like I said, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on, and we got 10 escapees. One was captured. We got 10 escapees last I checked, last update, and they're all out there. No telling. They could be in Texas, Mississippi. It's been that much time has passed. They could easily be out of state by now. So keep your head on the swivel. I'm gonna get on this DoorDash thing, and hopefully I don't run into no escapees, you know. So, you know, we'll see.